Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DI 101 webinar series. My name is Jared Evans, and I am the Director of Marketing for Distribution International. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are new to the DI 101 webinar series, I will tell you that it is an incredible resource offered to DI's customers, partners, and associates. By partnering with our manufacturers and our industry experts, these webinars deliver informative presentations about industry trends, new technology, new products, and product applications. In order to fully support our customers, Distribution International offers products and solutions from multiple manufacturers and brands in many different product categories. This webinar does not represent an endorsement of one manufacturer or brand over another. We pride ourselves in partnering with manufacturers that deliver products of the highest quality to our customers. We are extremely excited to welcome our strategic manufacturing partner, Johns Manville, for today's webinar presentation. This presentation will be covering Johns Manville's calcium silicate products. You will learn about the past, present, and future of JM's Thermo-1200 as we discuss the following topics that matter to you and your customer's business, such as CUI performance, XOX corrosion inhibitor, water resistance, comprehensive strength, durability, fire protection, and more. I would like to introduce our presenters today. First, we have Jack Bittner. He's Senior Product Manager for Johns Manville Industrial. He manages all of the industrial insulation materials produced by Johns Manville Industrial. Jack has been involved in the industrial insulation business for more than 40 years. We also have Eric Alley, Sales Leader of Industrial Insulation in Canada. Eric is the Sales Leader for North America, the Performance Materials business of Johns Manville. With that, without further delay, I'll tell you what, before I turn it over, I do want to inform everybody of how we will field questions. To submit questions, please use the Questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. You can submit your questions at any point during the webinar, and we will answer the questions at the end. So without further delay, I will turn this over to Jack Bittner with Johns Manville.
Thanks, Jared. And before we get started, I want to thank Jared, you personally, and Distribution International for inviting us to participate in your 101 series of webinars. It truly is an honor, and I got to tell you, we do appreciate it. So I will get started here, but first, of course, the legal stuff. The information provided in this webinar is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional engineering design and/or documentation required by building codes, contracts, or applicable law. Please refer to the manufacturer's specific application guides, instructions, and guarantee requirements on all projects. And now that that's done, we can get into the meat of the matter. First, well, Jared already introduced us. I just want to add on my part that in the 40 plus years I've been in this business, I started as an insulator for Brown and Root on the ship channel down there in Houston, and progressed to working for a couple of distributors, as well as at Johns Manville. I've been here for 16 years, and I've been a sales rep and market managers and product manager throughout my career here at JM.
Thanks, Jack. My name again is Eric Alley. I'm the Industrial Sales Leader. I've been with JM for almost 22 years. The last 3.5 has been as the Industrial Sales Leader. Prior to that, I was on the mechanical side. Spent 6 years out of Nashville, Tennessee, about 14 years in the Kansas City area, and then I just recently relocated to Denver in the last year or so. So with that, we'll jump into this presentation. I want to talk, we're gonna tee up the whole product line here, but I want to talk a little bit about a real handy guide that has always been helpful to me. There was a fella at Johns Manville, a product engineer. He's been retired 5 or 6 years ago. His name was Monroe Shoemate, and a lot of the content we're presenting today is work that Monroe did through the years. And one of the handy little things he had was this particular slide that shows all of the, or a lot of the insulations you're going to find in the industrial marketplace and the temperature ranges at which they're kind of recommended for use. And of course, not all products are perfect for every application. We at Johns Manville, we play in the calcium portion. We're in perlite, mineral wool, fiberglass. We have a microporous blanket. We've got poly ISO. We also have phenolic foam. There's a couple products that we don't get into, but are very prominent in the industrial business: aerogel, foam glass, cellular glass, needle D glass. These are all products, and I just wanted to mention this. We used to take this slide when we would do lunch and learns for engineering groups in the early 2000s, and we really found this to be a very good point of reference for engineers, for anybody that's in the industry. It's just a good point of reference. We actually had mouse pads made with this slide on the mouse pad. For those of you that used to use mouse pads, I think it's kind of a bygone technology, but I probably still have a couple of those. But really good point of reference, and I would encourage anyone, if you'd like to have one of these, contact Jared or get in touch with myself. We can certainly send out a copy of this slide. You can make your own copy. It's a nice little piece to have it to reference. So moving over, I want to talk a little bit about the portfolios that we're going to be talking about today. Our Thermo-1200 calcium silicate portfolio, we kind of broken it down into a couple different categories. We're certainly going to be talking about pipe, and just for reference, the pipe insulation is available in pipe sizes from 1/2 inch to 24 inches in diameter, varying thicknesses. All the sections are 3 foot in length. We do have some different ways that it comes. The picture there is depicting half sections. We also offer the product in quad sections, which of course is 4 pieces from 20 inch to 37 inch diameters. We also offer hex pieces, which of course is in 6 sections from 38 to 52 inches in diameter. If you move over to the block, we offer the block in a flat block, which is excellent for insulating surfaces that are flat, of course. We also offer the block in 3V scored block, which is handy when you're going around a large vessel. The product kind of breaks along those scores, and it adheres to the profile of the pipe or the vessel that you're trying to cover. And then finally, below, in the last several years, we've introduced beveled lags. We cut those beveled lags out of flat block. Beveled lags are for use on vessels and tanks that are 126 inch in diameter and larger. Then over on the other side, we have the curved segments, which are for use on pipes and vessels with diameters from 30 to 126 inches. Now, one of the things you might notice if you look at our data page, we do have some overlap, particularly between the quad and hex pipe offerings and the curved segments and the V-groove block. And so there's a couple reasons for that. There's the curved segs are kind of a new, at least from an engineering standpoint, the engineers have really kind of caught on to those curved segs. They really go nicely around the profile of a large vessel, and the gaps are closed. If you look at the V-grooved block, a lot of times when you break that block around a vessel, the gaps that we've cut in there, the scored gaps, don't completely close. So engineers really like to have all those gaps closed. They get that with curved segments. So that's why curved segments have really kind of taken off here in the last couple of years. We also offer different configurations. Most contractors prefer to work with pipe sections, but we do offer curved segs and blocks, if there's a preference by the contractor to use one or the other. And then finally, when we get a really big job that requires a lot of quads or hexes, we can run into lead time issues that we can address with the curved segs or the block. And so if you've got a project that requires a lot of material and it needs to be completed in a short amount of time, it may be worthwhile looking at curved segs or scored block, as we can probably get that to you a little bit quicker. One thing I did want to mention is we currently cut our curved segs in our mineral wool fabrication plant in Houston. We are in the process of moving that profiler over to our Reston facility. So that should help us on lead times a little bit. Currently, we have to ship block over to Houston. We cut it, and then we package it up and send it out to the distributor, the contractor, job site, whatever the case may be. In the future, beginning this fall, we'll be able to take the product directly from the line in Ruston, cut it on site, and ship from Ruston as well. We'll also be able to mix it with other products, so pipe, bevel lags, whatever the case may be. Okay, so we're going to talk about several subjects today in the Thermo-1200 product category. Obviously, it's a Type 1 product, which means that the maximum operating temperature is up to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. We will touch on, we do have a couple Type 2 products which have higher temperature operating temperatures up to 1,700 degrees that we will touch on a little bit. But for most of the presentation, we're going to be talking about the Type 1 Thermo-1200 product. The compressive strength, ASTM requires 100 PSI. Thermo-1200 surpasses that. We're also going to talk about water resistance and the XOX corrosion inhibitor. Those are not required by ASTM, but those are product enhancements that we've made over the years to make the product perform better. Finally, we'll also be talking briefly about density per ASTM. It needs to be higher than 14 pounds per cubic foot. And then we're going to talk about applications. Typical applications are going to be found in chemical processing plants, refineries, power plants, where we're looking at pipe and equipment type applications. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of these benefits that Jack's going to get into a lot more detail as we move through the presentation. We're going to talk about the XOX corrosion inhibitor, which is a chemical that we've added to the product, which is an additional line of defense against corrosion under insulation. We've added this to our product since 2002. It's also comes in our other rigid insulation in the form of perlite. So Jack will talk about that a little bit, why that's important, of course. We're going to talk about water resistance. We just started making our product water resistant probably in the last 3 or 4 years. This came as a direct request from contractors who would like to have a little bit more time as they're out on the job site installing the product if a rainstorm happens to come up. So Jack will talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about the compressive strength of the product. It's a very robust product. It absorbs a lot of abuse and retains its insulating value. So that's important when we're talking about CalSil applications. Then also we're going to touch on the consistent thermal performance of CalSil. And why is that important? Some of the products that Johns Manville offers, particularly the fibrous products, use binders. Those binders tend to burn out once you get above 400, 450 degrees. And so that can create soft spots in the insulation. If you have any abuse or anything to the exterior of the insulation, you can get soft spots in the insulation will lead to thinner insulation that maybe doesn't perform as the system is designed. And that's important. We always bring out this thermometer that shows 140 degrees is a pretty critical temperature for people that are operating facilities. That 140 degrees is kind of the safe touch that you can touch an aluminum jacket, let's say, without sustaining an injury or a burn. So it's really important that we design these systems so that the safe to touch is taken into consideration. And calcium silicate is really reliable. We've got 40 plus years of experience at Johns Manville in helping calculate how much insulation you need to make sure that you're designing a system that is safe to touch. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, and then we actually have some very exciting news. We've been doing a lot of testing. This is brand new. In fact, I think we just got the test results back in the last week or so. I think this is the first audience that is actually hearing about this. We have passed some testing for passive fire protection with our Thermo-1200 product line. We've had a 2-hour fire rating for the Super CalTemp, the Type 2 products, probably for the better part of the year, and we've actually secured a good bit of work with these products. The exciting news that we have to share today will involve the Type 1 Thermo-1200. We almost achieved a 2-hour fire rating. We got to 115 minutes. That may provide some use to an engineer that's looking at a passive fire protection system. We did pass a full 2-hour rating with the Type 1A product, the HP Block. And so those products are both readily available from both locations. Jack will touch on that and get a little bit more into the detail around the testing we've done and what we're going to be presenting. You know, the great thing about this, we've just got the results back. We haven't even got our marketing machine cranked up to, you know, build all the collateral, the webinar. But rest assured, in the next coming weeks or months, we will be putting together webinars and collateral that will get this out and make sure that the market knows about this exciting improvement with the calcium silicate product from Johns Manville. Okay, with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jack, and he's going to take us through some of these benefits of a CalSil system.
Thanks, Eric. First, I'm going to talk about compressive strength. The high compressive strength of calcium silicate. I said for years that CalSil's greatest strength is its strength. And historically, that's been absolutely true, and it still is. But now, I think, based on the way the market's changed, probably equal to the importance of compressive strength is the corrosion inhibitors in the product. And I'll get into greater detail on that here shortly. But let's talk about compressive strength. What we've got here is a bar chart with round bars showing the ASTM in gray required compressive strength minimums versus the blue, which is actual testing. And just so everybody knows, the mineral wool, the perlite, and the calcium silicate we tested here, of course, are ours. And the calcium or the cellular glass, of course, is not, because we don't make calcium or cellular glass. But what's important here is the relative compressive strengths of each one. And, you know, mineral fiber being a fiber, you're not expected to have high compressive strength. But then you go up to the greatest compressive strength, and the calcium silicate has a superior compressive strength over all the other products. And compressive strength is important for pretty much once the product's been installed. I mean, it certainly is helpful during installation, but once it's installed, then the physical abuse happens, and that's where compressive strength comes into play. People are always going to walk on it. If you look at the little advertisement there on the far right, you know, those grizzlies don't mind walking on it. I guess it keeps them out of the deep snow. But you'll see throughout this presentation, as we talk about features and benefits, there'll be a small sales aid or a flyer where we've actually done advertisements or something else. So that's what the Bayer ad is. But again, the superior compressive strength is calcium silicate, because people always walk on pipes, sit on pipes, hook ladders up to them, climb around, use the pipes as a ladder, and it's just, you know, the opportunities for abuse are endless. So compressive strength is key. And the reason is, when you squish, as Eric mentioned, squash a product and reduce it, say, from 2 inches to 1 3/4, 1.5 inches, you've changed the thermal conductivity. That product will not perform if it doesn't have its thickness like it was intended to in the design. So I talked a little bit about the mineral wool product with low compressive strength. There's another issue that we need to consider when we look at any mineral fiber product. And again, we make mineral wool. To reinforce with everybody, so I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here. It's a fact. And the reason, like Eric mentioned, the reason we have 4 or 5 or whatever different types of insulation is because each one has its place. And mineral wool definitely has its place. But what we need to know is there's certain areas where you don't want to use it. And that is because it has a binder in it that is an organic material. And if it's organic, it will oxidize or burn out at elevated temperatures. And in the JM mineral wool, the binder's burnout starts 350, 400 degrees. So, and calcium silicate does not have any organic binders. It's completely inorganic chemistry, so there is no concern about binder burnout and the product compressing. The binder in mineral wool is what gives the fibers their loft and what holds them together. And you can see in the picture on the right the thermal gradient through this sample. The gray portion was, of course, up against the hot pipe, and that saw the elevated temperatures, which caused the binder to oxidize. The brown is where it's not as hot, but you can see the oxidation starting to happen. And then, of course, the outside that's still green near the surface is obviously below 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and still hasn't seen any of the evidence of the binder burnout. And also that gray portion in the middle there is pretty much what the mineral wool fibers look like when they're coming off the spinners. They're a white, off-white product. It's the binder that pretty much that essentially gives the material the color. Fiberglass is the same way. Now that I think about it, it's white until the binder's added, and that's what turns it yellow. So without a binder, that area where the binder's burned off, if there's an area of vibration, if it's near motors, or just even over time, because the binder is what gives the fibers their loft, without binder, things can settle. And vibration makes that even worse. In extreme cases, over time, you'll find mineral wool insulation where the binder is burned out and the fibers with gravity have settled pretty much under the pipe. So it's really very well insulated on the bottom, but not so much on the top. And that's when you can get burns because it's got metal jacketing on it, and you don't necessarily know how much insulation's underneath it. So, but don't get me wrong, there are a lot of places for mineral wool, and we sell a fair amount of mineral wool. But the organic binder is something to remember, and it's going to because it's organic, it's going to come into play here shortly when I talk about water resistance and hydrophobicity, which I'm about to start now. Corrosion under insulation. Every sales call we make, any of our guys on engineers or end users, corrosion under insulation comes up. We've got a lot of data, a lot of science on it that is on our website. So I'm not going to get into great detail because we simply don't have enough time here. But one of the things, there are 4 things required for corrosion under insulation to happen. And the one that's most controllable is the presence of liquid water up against the pipe. So there's a number of ways the industry has approached this. A properly designed system with a good metal jacket system is the first line of defense. And the industry has evolved to a couple others, including our XOX corrosion inhibitor, which is coming up in a couple of slides. But one of the things we've seen over the last few years is water resistance in mineral wool, and we also have it now in our Thermo-1200 calcium silicate. But we put it in our Thermo-1200 calcium silicate for originally a different reason. JM has had, through the years, a time or two a year, what we call contractor advisory councils, where we get contractors in a specific region together for a half a day in the same room, and we just listen. And in one of those 4 or 5 years ago, the contractors as a group said, the thing you can give is CalSil is great. We love installing it. It's tough, it's strong, but its weakness is the way it absorbs water. And that causes problems on a job site. So if anybody who's been a contractor or on a job site knows, you can install insulation faster than the metal guys can come back over it with the metal jacket. So over the morning or, most of the day, the insulators are way down there on the pipe rack and the metal guys are playing catch up. And that's okay, except every afternoon on the Gulf Coast, it rains. And in some areas, it rains about that much as well. When that happens, that insulation has to be covered up, or in the past it did, with the mad scramble to find the visqueen or the tarps or whatever it is they're going to cover it with to keep the rain from soaking into it, which is what it did prior to water resistance. So we came back with that idea and developed a project and scoped it around making calcium, our Thermo-1200 calcium silicate water resistant. And part of that scope was, according to the ASTM spec for calcium silicate, it can't have more than 20% moisture in the product by weight. So we scoped it to be 15 or less maximum. And then over a 20-minute rainstorm, moderate to heavy rainstorm, and that translates to about 1.25 inches an hour. And what we ended up with when the project was complete was a product that actually in those 20 minutes, on average, absorbs about 7% of its weight by water over the 15-minute or 20 minutes with the moderate to heavy rainstorm, which is vastly different than what it was, where in that same 20 minutes, it would have absorbed 88% of its weight by in water. And just so you to look at what would an hour be, which everybody always asks, so we ran it. An hour before it was water resistant was it would absorb up to 168% of its weight gained by in water, versus now it's about 25. But again, our goal was to keep it less than 15% over a moderate rainstorm, because that's, in that 20 minutes, the guys can get it covered up with visqueen and taken care of. And nothing's going to get covered, actually, if there's lightning, because then for safety, the workers got to get under cover somewhere. So this is this benefit we came up with specifically for contractors. And we did this, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. And since then, of course, the engineers liked it a lot more than I thought they would, because we did this for contractors. In addition, now everything's water resistant, water or hydrophobic for CUI mitigation reasons. So this was a triple benefit to us by doing this for CalSil. Since then, we've also made our mineral wool pipe insulations and board products and wraps water resistant as well. So, the corrosive potential of insulation. We've already talked about two things you can do out of 3 to help mitigate corrosion under insulation. One of them was the jacket. The second one is water resistance or hydrophobicity. With the idea being, keep the water out and things will be fine. However, that's one tool in the toolbox for the corrosion under insulation, because, as I mentioned with mineral wool, anything that's organic will oxidize. And the water resistance and hydrophobic nature of these materials helps during installation. But once the heat is applied to the pipe, the additives that we all use to make our products corrosion or water resistant or hydrophobic are organics, and they will burn out, similar to what we saw in that sample of mineral wool, closer to the pipe where the thermal gradient exists for the elevated temperatures to be able to happen. Not necessarily outside, but certainly close to the pipe. So this is the results of a ASTM C, what's the number? I just lost it. 1617, sorry. Corrosion test, which is a corrosion test for carbon steel pipes. One thing I want to point out here is the shorter the bar, the better, because it's the lower corrosion potential. And the materials with the drops on top of it are all hydrophobic. But the other two, the water resistant mineral wool and water resistant Thermo-1200, are water resistant. So everything here has some level of water resistance or hydrophobicity. But you can see the various results in this test. Again, lower the better. So what we see is JM has two products there towards on the right side. The green one is our perlite. That's hydrophobic. The one right next to it is Thermo-1200, which is water resistant. And then you compare it to the other ones. What's different about these products? And the difference is the XOX corrosion and inhibiting chemistry. So that's the third factor. What is the XOX corrosion inhibitor? It's the chemistry of the materials that provide on-demand, and I'll just define that in a minute, protection in the presence of liquid water. It's integral to all of our CalSil products. It's part of the formulation. It's inorganic. It's part of the raw materials and the and everything else in the formula. The thing to note is it's dormant when dry. You don't need it when it's dry, and it's activated by water. And what does that activation mean? Well, it buffers the pH on the up against the surface of the pipe, and it forms a silica and silicate-based physical coating on a pipe, almost like people are using pipe coatings that they apply before the insulation's on these days. It's similar to that, with the idea being keep the water off the pipe. So that's what the silica and silica-based physical coating is, that leaches down out of the product with water to coat the pipe surface. These properties are present for the life of the system. It's not anything that's going to leach out, and now you don't have any left. We've got all kinds of tests we can talk about we even got webinars and things on our website that talk about how all these hundreds of cycles, dozens of cycles that we put the product through, and it still performs. And it's still insulated as well too once it's dried out. So that's the third level of corrosion under insulation mitigation. We've got the jacket, you've got water resistance, but over time, when water does get up against the pipe, due to lack of maintenance, due to abuse, due to high temperatures, where the hydrophobicity is burned out, or the water resistance, now what do? Now you've got the third level, which is the XOX corrosion inhibitor. XOX is only available from JM, and it's contained in our Thermo-1200 CalSil and our Sprule WR-1200 expanded perlite. We haven't figured out how to put it in mineral wool yet. So it's a belt and suspenders, and then another bungee cord tied around your waist approach. I know this slide's a little bit busy, but you can see that we've got water-resistant CalSil, we have the corrosion XOX corrosion inhibitor, and then the first line of defense is the jacketing. One thing this graphic does show is the pipes coated, because that's typically what's happening nowadays. And before the insulation applied, or even after, we're seeing an emerging technology or trend towards spacer systems. And the spacer on the idea there is to keep the water off the pipe, allow it to drain out. And the spacer on the OD under the jacket is intended to allow the water to also drain out through a hole or some other means in the insulation jacketing. But it's a belt and suspenders and another bungee cord like Jethro, with the jacketing combined with water resistance, combined with the XOX corrosion inhibitor. Now let's talk about fire protection that Eric teed up earlier. The fire protection we're talking about is passive fire protection. And what that means, according to the definition, it's a form of fire safety that's inert, non-active, during normal situations, but becomes active during a fire event. Some examples might be the sprinkler system in the office building, that the sprinklers don't go on until there's a fire. Also, technically, firefighters are passive fire protection, because they're not moving or doing anything until there's an actual fire. So, a fire in a hydrocarbon facility, or like an oil refinery or a petrochemical plant, is extremely hot because it's hydrocarbons that are burning. It's way more critical than in a building or an office or something along those lines, where the fire test there is E84 for flame and smoke. But for a hydrocarbon fire, there's UL 1709, and what this does is simulate a hydrocarbon pool fire. And this thing goes from ambient to 2,000 degrees within 5 minutes. And the goal is for whatever the passive fire protection material is, and in our case insulation, is to hold the inside temperature to less than 1,000 degrees for 2 hours, while that pool fire is going on at 2,000 degrees on the outside for those 2 hours. So typically, you're going to always want to double layer the insulation material because you don't want any through joints. And you won't use aluminum jacketing because aluminum has a pretty low melting point. So stainless steel would be the one you would specify in what we've tested. Applications: large diameter type tanks and vessels, pipes, and also retrofitted systems. We do get calls from engineers saying, okay, I've got this material on my pipe. How much passive fire protection does that give me? And what do I need to do to get it to 2 hours? So the news is we achieved a 2-hour fire rating on our 3-inch HP block design. Again, this is double layer, so it will ultimately be 6 inches. And we also tested our 3-inch regular type 1 Thermo-1200, and we got close but no cigar, but 115 minutes isn't bad. We just missed it by 5. And there are some engineers who will accept that for some of their passive fire protection requirements. And again, we just got the final report this week, so all of the collaterals in the works, and you'll be seeing more on this soon. So you might ask, hey, you already had 2 hours with your Super Caltemp 1700 degree block, which is the type 2 cal. So what did you need it? Why did you want to do it for the type 1 materials? And the reason is this is a more cost-effective solution to the customer. The Super Caltemp 1700 or the FireTemp L is only available in certain sizes and block form only. We only also make it in one factory, where we can make the HP block and Thermo-1200 in both of our factories in Louisiana and in Colorado. The availability is generally better. And there are 3 configurations available for more effective field installations as well. We've got flat block, 3V scored, curved segments, improved lead times like I mentioned, and then 2 more features that our Caltemp 1700 degree block does not have because it's totally different chemistry. But now you can also have water resistant as well as the XOX corrosion inhibitor as part of the entire system, and with the 2 hours or hour and 15 minutes on the 1709 test. Eric, you got the ball.
Okay, I'm going to bring us home here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these installation benefits. Jack talked a lot about the flexural strength and how it resists abuse, that kind of thing. It's also important when you consider shipping and handling. The product is very strong. It arrives on the job site ready to go. And, if we do any LTL shipments, I know that freight has been such a big concern. And if people have been dealing with LTL shipments, you know how the trucking companies tend to treat those kind of shipments. So it's important to have a robust product that's going to remain intact all the way to the job site and beyond. So that's a big deal. One of the benefits of this high compressive strength, is the amount of aluminum jacketing. It's kind of a soft cost savings. When you look at a rigid insulation, I'd like to direct your attention to table 3 down there at the lower right. That's the ASTM recommendations of thickness on jacketing. Rigid insulation, which would be the Cal-Sil on the left, versus a non-rigid insulation, which would be the mineral wool or fiberglass. you'll notice that up to 24-inch pipes, you can use an 016 aluminum jacketing with rigid insulation. If you're going to do the same thing with a non-rigid insulation, you're looking at 024. So why is that important? You know, 016 is much easier to work with. You're going to get a lot more production out of your insulators if they're installing 016 material versus an 024 material. And then, you know, most of the people on the phone are very aware of what's going on in the metal markets with shortages and high prices. There's been multiple price increases. 016 is much more economical to procure than 024 in normal times, and particularly this year we've seen all kinds of crazy price increases. You know, Jack mentioned the water resistance properties of the calcium silicate offering. One thing that we want to make sure that we point out, you know, we're on this call on Distribution International's platform. You know, we've got 2 facilities where we stock a lot of material, but then there are multiple facilities across Distribution International's network where they keep a good bit of material as well. And then you couple those distribution points with their folks that they have in the field. I'm told they have 70 reps in the field.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Yes, Jack?
69 and a half. My brother's one of them.
Well, I will let that be discussed maybe over Thanksgiving time. You guys can work that out here in a month or so. But they do have roughly 69 and a half reps in the market. Couple that with the 9 reps that we have out there. And we've got a lot of knowledge roaming around the marketplace to make sure that we are specifying and using the correct products for the industrial application at hand. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the application-based solutions. You know, these are fairly new in the grand scheme of things. You know, if we've got a 40-year history, these products were introduced in the last 2 or 3 years, so they're still fairly new to Johns Manville in our offering. Curved segs and beveled lags. You know, to the right, you can see some of the marketing collateral that we've got out. You've probably seen that ad in the Insulation Outlook magazine or one of the regional trade organization publications. Wanted to mention a couple things. The product has the same XOX corrosion inhibitors that our standard 1200 offering has. It's made out of the same type of slurry. I want to discuss the water resistant properties of this product a little bit. You know, a lot of people can cut beveled lags and curved segs. What we have found, you know, through the years of since we've added the water resistant chemistry to the product is that when we cure the product, when we cure the block, that chemistry tends to congregate near the exterior of the product. So when you cut into a flat block, for example, the exterior is going to have a really good water resistant crust on it. But as you get deeper and deeper into the product, there's less water resistant chemistry in the product. And so when you cut into the product, when you cut beveled lags, one thing that Johns Manville does, or curved segments, is we do a secondary dip on that product into the solution that gives the water resistance to the product. So if water resistance is important to you and you've got a job where you're using curved segs, Johns Manville is doing that added step of dipping the product. I'm not an expert on other people's products. I would guess that we're probably the only ones that are doing that. I may be wrong, but if you want that peace of mind that you've got a water-resistant curved seg or beveled lag, we are dipping those products before we send them out to you. Okay, so this is a real-life application. This is a food processing facility somewhere in the Midwest. It's a pretty good-sized vessel. You know, that looks like probably a 10 or 12-foot step ladder there to the left. So you could guess that that's probably an 8-foot, maybe 10-foot diameter vessel that is being insulated. You can look at the right picture, and that gives you a little bit of an idea of the technique of installing this. Looks like they've got a bungee cord holding the material in place until the bands can be added. You can see the nice fit closing up all the gaps as that product is installed. So we appreciate one of our contractors sending that picture in. That looks like that could maybe win the prize that I'm going to talk about here in just a moment. So let's progress. We're going to talk a little bit about, again, I'm going to recap what we've been learning here about the U.S.-based manufacturing. We've been talking about, we have 2 facilities where we manufacture the product in the United States, Ruston, Louisiana. Fruita, Colorado. We are a made in America product. There are certain projects, typically government projects, that require made in America product. So that may be important to you. We also get some runway with union contractors. Some of those union contractors like to buy made in America product. We have that to offer. Each of those locations, we have multi-million-dollar inventories. I mentioned before we've got 9 dedicated sales reps in North America. We've got 2 in Canada, 7 in the U.S. We also have a full technical support. So we kind of break that down a couple ways. We've got internal technical support. We have engineers dedicated to producing all of our products, whether it be calcium, mineral, perlite. They're always working on improving the product, getting certifications like this passive fire protection certification. There's all that kind of stuff going on internally, but we also have a resource that is customer facing in the form of Heather Sharif. She's our technical support down in Houston. Heather, we can get in contact with her if we need a letter written regarding certain applications. She does a lot of analysis on determining economic thicknesses. So if you've got a situation, you need to know how much material you need to make the product safe to touch, the metal jacket, we can get in touch with Heather and she can run the calculations and get a letter back to us, usually within a few hours. So we've got that kind of support that we try to provide the market. Again, we do have a full line of solutions where we can choose the right product for the application. Again, talking about that product breadth that we have, calcium, perlite, mineral wool, polyiso, phenolic foam, lots of different solutions that we can provide. I want to talk a little bit about, being an industrial mechanical insulation leader. Johns Manville has been in business since, I think, 1858. That's over 160 years of continuous service to the insulation industry. We've seen good times, we've seen bad times. We're kind of like one of those old insurance companies that's always there when you need them. And then in 2001, we were acquired by the Berkshire Hathaway group of companies, and so that gave us additional financial stability. And it's a little bit of a peace of mind if you're out on a job site and you're wondering about the products that are supplied on your product. Berkshire Hathaway is a very financially stable company, and we can think of nobody better to be backing our products than Warren Buffett and the companies that he owns. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about additional resources that we have available to everyone. We are going to be on Twitter. In fact, I think I saw this announcement come out yesterday, and we're actually running a promotion to kind of get off the ground with our Twitter account. Insulation Intel is where we are, and we're actually having a little bit of a contest. I just got this yesterday, and I'm kind of reading this from my here's kind of the rules to kind of get this off the ground. We want you to follow us at Insulation Intel on Twitter. We'd ask that if you have any interesting projects or designs that you'd like to showcase, we'd like you to take a photo and tag that to hashtag Insulation Intel, and we're going to do a monthly contest through the end of the year. And I guess our marketing folks will take a look at that and choose their favorite pictures and award a prize each month through the end of the year. This month we're giving away a soft-sided Yeti cooler, which looks really nice. I may have to send in some pictures myself. Also want to touch on insulation resource that we have called The Source. This is a very handy spot where we keep all of our webinars, our ebooks, our blogs, documents. If you go on there right now, there's probably a dozen webinars on demand that are there that you can view. Say today we piqued your interest with corrosion under insulation. We've got a couple webinars there that really get into the detail and the weeds about how corrosion under insulation occurs, how to mitigate corrosion under insulation. A lot of good stuff in there. If you're interested in perlite, we've got perlite webinars, whatever you want to see there. Now, how do you get to the source? It's easy. You go to the jm.com website. You hit, there's a drop down you can hit in installations for industrial insulation. And then down on the right side of the page, you'll see the source, Insulation Intel. We direct a lot of engineers to that site. It's typically one click. You can see data pages. You can see our blog, our webinars, whatever you want to do. So I would encourage anyone, whether you're brand new to the industry, if you're just starting your career at DI, or if you're brand new at a contractor, if you're an engineer right out of school, it's a great place to get some basic training. And then there's a lot of highly technical content there as well. So if you're a seasoned professional, there's something for everyone if you visit the source. Okay, and with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. I'm checking the time. Looks like we're right on time. We've completed this in about 50 minutes. We should have about 10 minutes for questions. If we don't get to all the questions, we'll certainly try to answer them via email. I would caution everyone, we're experts on JM products. We're not going to be answering any questions about competitive products. We would ask that you reach out to those competitors that manufacture those products, their website, or get in touch with them if you have questions about those products. The other thing that I want to mention is given the audience that we have, we cannot answer any questions regarding pricing or market served. Again, I would ask that if you have a question regarding pricing of a Johns Manville product, please reach out to your local Johns Manville representative or your local Distribution International representative to square away those pricing issues offline. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jared. Do you have any questions for us at this point, Jared?
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Great presentation from you and Jack. I really appreciate y'all's time. I do want to just remind the audience that to submit questions, use that questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel. You can just type out your question and submit it there. While we're waiting on some questions to come in, I do want to take a second to tell everyone about Distribution International's new digital customer platform. In 2020, we completely overhauled our website, distributioninternational.com. We added a wide range of value-added features, including our customer portal called Customer Connect. When you are logged in as a DI customer, you can view past invoices, access pricing, request quotes, and you can even submit orders all online. Maybe the best feature is that there's a detailed online product catalog of more than 29,000 products that is easily to search and easy to navigate. Go to distributioninternational.com and register for your online account to start making your job easier. First question I have is, I think this is related to the diagram you showed of the pipe with the spacers. It says, regarding the spacers, you mentioned that was a trend. What applications have you seen this being done specifically?
It's been petrochemical and refining, primarily where engineers have called us about with questions about the efficiency and do spacers work and that sort of thing. And we're not in that business, so we don't have any good answers for that. But I mention it as a trend because it appears to be a trend that's gaining some feet.
We're seeing a lot of activity around the spacer systems in Western Canada. Is kind of where I kind of feel like that's where it originated. There are a couple companies up there that that seem to be specializing in this kind of application where they're trying to create space between the insulation and the pipe, as well as in some cases between the jacketing and the pipe, as well as was described in the diagram. Again, I think this would be there are companies that do specialize in this, and I'm sure that if you reached out to your Distribution International contact, they could put you in touch with some of the companies that do that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned pricing as well. Eric, I did just want to say, for pricing, be sure to contact your DI rep, and they'd be happy to give you a quote for anything you need related to these JM Calcel products. I don't have any other questions submitted today. Either you thoroughly answered everything, or we just have some shy folks in attendance here today. So I guess, was there anything you wanted to add while we try to stall just a little bit to see if any questions come through?
Yeah, I got two things. Beveled lags have been around for years, and then they went away, and now they're coming back. There may be some folks who don't know what a beveled lag is and what the difference is between a curved seg and a beveled lag. And the difference is this: the beveled lags are flat on the top and the bottom. They got a small angle cut into them on the side. There's no curvature to it. Where the curved segs, of course, are curved with angles on the sides as well. And if we don't have any further questions, Jared, I'm going to have one for you after this meeting, because I want to know if my brother was actually on this call, because if he's not, I'm going to call Mom and tell on him.
All right. Well, thanks, Jack, Eric. Thank you guys so much for your time. And thanks to everybody for joining. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and check out, if you go to the Distribution International website, in a couple of days, we will have a link to the recorded version of this webinar. And you can also view past recorded webinars from this series. When you go to distributioninternational.com, just go to resources and click on DI 101 webinar series, and you will find links to the recorded past webinars there. Follow us on LinkedIn, and that'll be a good way to stay in tune with upcoming webinars as part of this series as well. Thanks to everybody for joining. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks.